Truth Studio. I'm your host Noopur, and today I'm really glad to have Mr. Todd Little with us. Todd is the CEO of Lean Kanban. He is an executive with deep experience in leading the development of commercial technology solutions. Hi Todd, welcome to our studio.
Thank you.
So, Todd, how do leadership and culture intersect?
Excellent. Culture is an interesting characteristic of an organization. It's a combination of the people, the policies, the procedures, what people actually do on a regular basis. And leaders are there to. Leaders can have a significant influence on culture. It's a dance between leaders and cultures because leaders can help shape it, but they can't just say, here's your culture. It doesn't work that way. But they can certainly, effective leaders will shape the culture and understand the history. The culture is a large part of how things have been historically. And so a new leader comes into an organization and wants to create a new culture. They have to first understand what the existing culture, how it's behaving, and what's been keeping it going, because it's a living. The organization is almost a living organism. And so leaders can come in and try to understand that and then work to shape it in the mold that they would prefer to have the organization continue.
We often talk about asking the right question to assess the culture of the organization, but we never speak about what are these right questions. So, what are your views on that?
Yeah, so a large part of it is observation. Right? Observing not what people say they do, but what they actually do. And because that's what people revert to. That's what culture really is. It's what do people do when they aren't being told what else to do. And so you're trying to understand that. The other thing that I find, some of the questions, one of the most powerful questions is why. I've always told my teams when I was leading organizations and largely technology development organizations, I always felt that it was the not just the right, but it was critical for all my developers to be asking the why question. Why were they doing what they were doing? Not just do what they're told, but ask what is it what's the purpose? What's the business reason why we're trying to do this? And because if we don't know why, the reason I ask that is to say that is because developers, technologists, knowledge workers are making micro decisions all the time. And those micro decisions, if they don't understand why, they're making it in a vacuum. And so they're quite possible to making decisions which are not aligned to where leaders or the organization are trying to go. And so it's critical for leaders to be very clear about what it is, why it is that they want it. Not so much the what as much as the why, but the why is even more critical. And so I always find, when I go into places, I ask the why. Also, I ask what they're doing and observe what they're doing, and I'll ask them things regarding what are they doing that doesn't necessarily make sense to them. And then I ask them, why haven't they thought of changing it? That sometimes gets to the root of what could they do about it. Maybe they feel powerless. They feel like maybe they need permission to change how they're doing it. But oftentimes the people actually are pretty smart about things that they're doing that don't make sense. They actually know that pretty well. So I find that the more you dig into that, the more you expose, the more you can really sort of triangulate on how a culture is behaving. What are the positives? What are the potential negatives that are ongoing in the culture in order to try to pull it in the direction that you really want to take it.
So, Todd, how can we ensure that the right people are involved in decisions at the right time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're making decisions all the time. We're making big decisions that have long-term impact. We're also making, as I indicated, lots and lots of micro decisions on a daily, hourly basis. And so the key part, I think, in decision making is having really getting back to that why, the alignment to purpose. What is it that we're about? What is it that we're trying to accomplish in our organization? or within our team or within our unit, whatever that might be. What are we trying to accomplish? And then making sure that we've brought everyone together to understand that, get that sense of purpose. And then when decisions need to be, the team will largely figure out who needs to be involved in making decisions, because what then we're looking at with decisions is sort of what I call a blast radius. How big is this decision? What's the cause of failure in this decision? And many times with these micro decisions, we actually expect to fail frequently. We expect that we're going to try some experiments and they're not going to work. That's okay, because what we care about is getting it right in the end. But bigger decisions like what directions we take, what strategic directions we take, that involves a different set of stakeholders. That makes sure we have the right level in the organization involved. And again, it's the accountability for the direction, that the leadership level is accountable for direction and involved, and then the stakeholders, all the stakeholders that are really impacted by the potential of a failed decision. And so I think a lot of times what we're trying to often do is design those decisions so that they are experiments rather than commitments to long-term.
So as you said, Todd, that we let them experiment and decisions are kind of experiments. What if it turns out to be a failure? Yeah,
so what we like there is to have those types of decisions at the smallest level so that they are fail-safe. So that if we will expect, because we want to experiment, we're in a discovery process. Almost all knowledge work has elements of discovery. And so what we're doing is try to make sure that we're learning through the process. So these decisions we're taking are in order to allow actions. The worst thing to do is to make no decision, to stall, because that totally stagnates the process. We want to take decisions in order to make progress and to learn. Through the process of learning, yes, there will be times where we guessed wrong. That's okay. We know we're guessing we're guessing a lot of times, right? So it's okay to guess wrong, because what we care about is getting it right in the end. It's not about getting it right tomorrow. It's about getting the right answer to satisfy customer needs in the end. So in the big, we don't fail, but in the small, yes, we make some mistakes. We'll make some what we might call failures, but we're learning from that, and we're alternating and going in a different direction. We're making quick decisions to be able to do that. In order for that to be successful, you need a structure. You need to structure a model that enables that type of behavior. So that means you have to build on smaller cycles, feedback, and all the tech, and built learning into the whole process.
According to you, what steps must be taken before a big transformation decision is made? Yeah,
so that's an interesting question, because the Kanban answer to that is that we wouldn't do that. We don't believe in big transformations. We believe in evolutionary change. We start with where you're at today, and we just as I said before, we build these smaller experiments. So we build evolutionary change into our process. We look for small incremental changes that we can make so that we're not doing that big transformation. We're getting there, we're taking small steps, and we're learning along the way. The problem with a big transformation is we've designed that up. It's almost that we've designed it up front, we're taking a big hit, and then we're hoping that we guessed right. And yes, we may be successful, but it also may take a long time. We know that with big transformations, there's a big, almost immediate a decrease in performance whenever you take on something large. Even when you're taking on something small, you may have a hit in performance. The idea, though, is you recover faster when the changes are smaller. So we believe in smaller incremental changes, build that type of structure into the thinking and the sort of the DNA of the organism or the organization, to take those small changes, build on evolutionary change, and continue that forever. There's no end game with evolutionary change. We continue to evolve as we learn. So it's about building feedback, it's about building learning, and it's about taking small incremental change, not the big transformation. And the thing is, with that, that's an easy decision. Why wouldn't you be doing that? Why wouldn't you just start now and do that?
What is the best way to convey sense of urgency to our teams?
Yes, so I think sense of urgency, what I've always found with that is that sense of urgency comes from alignment to purpose. And it gets back to that why question. we need as leaders need to be very clear about setting the intent, the helping people helping the organization or the teams understand why it is critical, and what it is that really is critical. And the worst thing a leader can do is create a sense of urgency, a false sense of urgency, when there isn't really one. Because then they become hypocritical. It doesn't come across as authentic. So there is always an ongoing sense of urgency, and you want to create that. But when we create these artificial false sense of urgencies, it's really, I think, a very counterproductive in the long term. The people understand, get that, they see through it, and it just doesn't work very well. But in terms of creating an overall sense of urgency, that comes back to formulating where are we going, why are we going, and what do we have to do, what are our competitors doing, that we have to be able to lead that. And many times it's not even competitors, but we just want to make the world a better place. What does that look like? How could the future look? And that's the vision. How do we set that vision that people can rally behind?
What's your advice on fostering the development of a common vision?
Yeah, so I think, as I just indicated, a vision is so critical to establishing, where we're going, what the sense of urgency is, where are we out, how are we trying to create a common purpose. I think a really critical part of vision and strategy, not just to set what we're trying to do, but be very clear about what the things that we're not trying to do. And using it, I believe that really effective strategies and vision act as decision filters. They help us know, yes, this is something we really are trying to do, but there's a whole number of different things that maybe they sound like good ideas, but are really not the thing. So strategy and vision have to have focus. When they don't have focus, I sort of look at it as, I ask the question often is your strategy a bucket or a filter? Buckets collect things, and if your strategy is, we're going to do good work, or do good ideas, or make money, I could come up with 1,000 ideas and they could all fit into that. And so I got all these things in my bucket. But if my strategy is acting as a filter, filters take things out. So this is a way that helps us say no to something, or at least no, not now. And then we really emphasize doing the things that we really want to be good at. We want to be the best at something. So being the best at something means we have to narrow our focus down. Now, we might expand that over time, but we really need to be able to be right-sized for the time. So clarity of focus is absolutely critical to vision and strategy.
I want to understand, when do we set the stage unknowingly for the failure of our team?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think when we're in knowledge work, when we're in discovering, we are always, and when we're making decisions, right? There's always the possibility we set off on a path where we thought we knew that was right, and it turns out through discovery that it just doesn't make sense anymore. I think the critical thing for them is to have the adult conversations, right? It doesn't work for us to go in and say, well, that team messed up because they didn't deliver on this thing, on this idea I thought ought to be possible. Right? We need to have that adult. That's where leaders need to come in and say, look, okay, we went down a path. We thought we all did the right things to try to make this successful, and it turns out through discovery that was not possible, or it isn't meeting customer needs, or there was technological problems that are just not going to be there. We need to decide, okay, now what do we do about it? We now have new information. Let's not hold on to that bad decision. That was a decision that was appropriate at the time. Now we're 3 months later, or 6 months later. Now let's reevaluate. Let's constantly reevaluate. Don't hold on to this idea that we set out this long path. Once we learn out the path is not right, the most foolish thing we could do is to continue down that path. So we want to have that conversation, and this is where leadership and empowerment of the team come to say, let's have a conversation about where we're really at. Don't pretend anymore. Let's use the information we have. We have a whole lot of new information that we've gathered in the time, potentially new market data, potentially new information about the technology. Now let's get that together and hold a new decision. So I think this goes back to that question, how do we get the right people to making decisions? Oftentimes it's not the right people as much, well, right people is important, but it's the right information, right? And every time we have new information, we should be constantly reevaluating those decisions. We just don't hang on to those decisions because, it was a mandate. We constantly reevaluate that and say, are we still doing the right thing? And are we, is the reason we set out, is the core purpose that we set out for still valid? So constantly challenge that question.
To make a right decision, we just not need right people and right time, we need the right information as well.
Yeah, and whatever the right information is at that time, right? We don't want to defer decisions too long to create more, thinking that sometimes we get this false sense of that if we had more we had more information, we can make a better decision. I think you need to switch that situation around to say, knowing we're going to make decisions, what's the best decision at the time, and how do we structure a framework that lets us modify that decision and evolve that decision over time? Then it's a much more safe decision to be making.
Todd, according to you, what exactly business agility is and how do we achieve it?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting perspective because when Agile movement came around, it often was led really from a technology perspective, and so it was almost a bottom-up movement from technologists to say, this isn't working for us the way things are going. We think there's better ways to do it, and so they brought forth agile development techniques, which were great. The thing, and I think the what's happened over time was we've realized that it's not about being agile and agile transformations. The reason we're doing this is to enable business agility. Businesses want to be agile. They want to be able to adapt to changing conditions. And that's what business agility is all about. It's being able to adapt to changing conditions and building that all the way through the organization. What's an organizational structure that enables business agility? The entire organization to evolve. And just as I was saying before about you're wanting to build structures that enable the decisions to be made and updated and revised. That's what business agility is all about. It's about taking in new information, taking in feedback all along the way, so that not about getting it right up front, but about getting it right at the end. What are we doing to actually connect to our customers appropriately? What are we doing to make sure we understand what their problems and needs are, so that we're solving those problems in a way that they'll become loyal customers? It's about getting in connection to customers and then building the entire organizational structure and systems that enable us to deliver on that. And so I think that's the direction we're seeing, is that we could be, we see a lot of organizations go after and say, oh, I'm going to do an agile transformation, and they do an agile transformation, and they feel good about it because they've solved some problems. They solved a little bit of situation, but they haven't necessarily fully enabled the business agility that they really wanted. So I think that it's about putting the business and the customer first, and driving that. I was working in an organization in the 1990s that it was just an amazing place to work, because we had this very, very focused purpose, the sense of urgency. We knew what we were all going to try to do. It was very clear for the entire organization what we were trying to do. So we had a laser focus on what we were trying to do, connecting to our customers, a very, very direct connect to our customers, and we created an environment where people really wanted to be there. So we really focused on the people and the business side of things. And from a business agility perspective, it was just an amazing place. Now, if you looked in terms of processes and technologies, it was smart people and evolving that, but you wouldn't even necessarily they were doing anything. They had no formal processes. They were being effective. Their customer satisfaction numbers were fantastic, but it wasn't about being agile. It wasn't about, they didn't follow a bunch of you must do this type of thing. You must have user stories this way or anything like that. And I think that's the thing we lose sometimes. We try to replace what we really care about, which is business agility, with some proxy, which is perhaps an agile transformation. Processes and technology are great and useful, but they're only there to enable the success of the business agility. And so that's why what I really focus on is really how are we driving solutions that matter to customers. And once you do that, everything else comes to flow together.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for being with us. And it was wonderful chatting with you, and we got to learn a lot from you. And look forward to hear from you more on business agility and where we are going with the change management and strategy and leadership in coming days as well. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Noopur. Yep.